Miami is one of these teams, one of 5 teams, being Miami, Michigan, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, and USC, who I have pegged as dark horses to win the 2025 national championship. And it's really as simple as you return enough quality production, have a good enough roster, whether it's blue chip ratio, you've developed well, there's emerging NFL or star talent, or you have, again, good coaching, good development, an advantageous schedule, you've won it all before. All these things go into the mixing bowl. They go into the oven, and I think one of these teams can come out of that oven as potentially the best cake out of all cakes, for that type of analogy. So starting off with Miami here, the Hurricanes, they bring back Francis Mauigoa on the offensive line. They also bring in James Brockermeyer to be center on the offensive line. They bring in transfer Carson Beck. And I started with the offensive line. We'll get to the defense here briefly. I started with the offensive line because that is where Miami is strong. And I think that is their biggest X factor out of all of these teams and out of all their different positions on the roster is Miami's offensive line. Obviously, we'll get to Notre Dame here in a minute. It's another team with an offensive line that has an X factor. But none of these teams, and no one but Miami, has the best offensive tackle in America. Before we resume this segment, please take a few seconds of your time to make sure you have liked the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for the channel and for any team podcasts and playlists linked in the description, and also comment your thoughts down below in the comment section and join my Discord server via the description. All of those things I just asked you to do are completely free, and they sign you up for things related to my channel, or they don't sign you up for anything. No cost to you, and all the benefit to you because we release daily college football content here on College Football with Sam. If you want to support the channel monetarily, sign up for a YouTube membership, or check any other links in the description for my merchandise store and Patreon page. Thank you very much, and let's get back to the segment. Again, being Francis Mauigoa. I love Carson Beck at quarterback. I love the running back room for Miami. I think that they've done a good job reloading there. I think that they have a lot of depth. You know, Mark Fletcher Jr., Jordan Lyle, Charmar Brown, who they got from North Dakota State. The offensive line, again, with Francis Mauigoa and Markel Bell at tackle. Got Matthew McCoy, Inez Cooper, and Samson Okunlola on the interior offensive line, and then James Brockermeyer at center. It's a very strong, deep physical unit. I love Ruben Bain Jr. at defensive end, and I think that Armando Blount, Malik Bryant, and Akeem Mesidor make it so that they can rotate a lot of guys at DN to get to the quarterback, the opposing quarterback. And I'm also optimistic about linebacker and corner, if I have to be honest. I think that Wesley Bissaint, Thrall Aguirre Jr., and Mohamed Toure make up a stable linebacker group. And if just one of Charles Brantley or Xavier Lucas pans out, combined with the young emerging talent of O.J. Frederique, I think they can have a great corner room. Brantley's projected to start at nickelback, for context, but still he was a corner at Michigan State. I lean negative at safety. Gotta be honest, with special teams, I lean a little bit negative there, although Bert Auburn has shown us before at kicker that if he's accurate, he can be a very clutch kicker and help you win a lot of games. And then game day coaching is a concern, of course, with Mario Cristobal. I think that the Hurricanes, with this schedule where, you know, they're plus 198 to reach the playoffs, they're in the plus 300s to win the ACC, depending on where you look. They got Notre Dame in week 1, then Bethune-Cookman and USF in week 3, Florida week 4, that's their second tough game, Florida State in week 6, before a bye and off the bye, they should win that game. Louisville week 8 can be tough, but Miami should beat them. Stanford week 9 is a win. SMU on the road week 10 is tough, but again, by talent should be a win. Syracuse at home week 11 and NC State at home week 12 should be wins. Back-to-back road games, week 13 and 14 against Virginia Tech and Pitt will be tough. But again, with the talent they have and a schedule that, combining all those games, ESPN's FPI only views as the 41st toughest schedule, means that Miami should play closer to their 12-0 ceiling than an 8-4 or 7-5 floor. Returning 57% of their production, upgrading their coaching staff by bringing in Corey Heatherman. I love Miami this year, and while I'm not picking them to win the national championship, I can absolutely see Miami win the ACC and upsetting Clemson, or maybe there's a rare one at that, where they're just straight up better than Clemson. They win the ACC, and then if Beck is playing at a 2023 level, or the level that he played at in 2024, where he was hot in November and showed some flashes again, then I love what Miami could potentially do in the postseason. And by dark horse here, I mean teams that have percentages in probably the low single digits who can win it all. So obviously, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, Oregon, and Penn State, and Clemson from the ACC, I think have many more percentage points than any of these teams do when it comes to their odds to winning the title. In fact, as I'll talk about in another segment, those 7 teams I mentioned are the top 7 teams per FanDuel's national championship odds to win it all. I think Vegas is perfect there in terms of who are the true national title contenders. Of course, minus LSU and also minus Notre Dame. And we'll talk about Notre Dame here. I'm so low on LSU that I have a very hard time seeing them win it all. I would never peg them as even close to being able to sniff a title this year. Michigan doesn't have a good chance to win the national championship, but I think they're at least in the dark horse conversation. I think LSU at best case scenario is in the conversation of making the playoffs. Tough schedule, you're relying on the portal, and Nussmeier is turnover prone and does not fit the modern day athleticism for being one of the best college quarterbacks. Could be wrong there, but I am banking on being correct, especially given what I saw from LSU last season. So let's talk about Michigan here. Michigan is at plus 205 to reach the playoffs, plus 1,000 to win the Big Ten. When I look at Michigan here, the Wolverines have a mean defense, 11 defensive linemen who weigh 300 pounds or more. Few teams in college football have that. Penn State doesn't. Ohio State and USC certainly don't. Oregon is close, but they do not have the same age there, and not quite 11 guys who are 300 pounds or more. Wink Martindale has said they're going to rotate 10 guys in the defensive line. That, combined with Bryce Underwood at quarterback, who I'm very optimistic on, who at the bare minimum is a massive upgrade over Davis, Warren, and Alex Orji. If anyone tells you differently, I hate to say it, but that's delusion or extreme bias, because being a 5-star quarterback coming out of high school and having an OC upgrade and more experience on the O-line and at running back and even at receiver than you did last year, having all those things and yet not being better than a walk-on or a guy who couldn't throw a forward pass, that is you wanting someone to be worse than they actually are. Not saying Underwood's going to be good, but he will be an upgrade no matter what over whoever he is replacing. It's the same if Mikey Keene somehow starts, and dare I say it, even if you somehow start Jake Garcia, which this conversation is just null and void, because then Michigan will not even be able to reach the playoffs. He is more talented than anyone who Michigan had starting last year. That quarterback room was bad. It was an ultimate waste of multiple NFL first-round talent. Outside of Bryce Underwood, who's a true freshman 5-star player, at running back I like Justice Haynes and Jordan Marshall. I like Michigan's interior offensive line, although tackle is a big concern for me. But Greg Crippen, Giovanni El-Hadi, Nathan Afabi, and some of that depth there, I think is at least good. D-line-wise, Rayshawn Benny, Damon Payne, Trey Williams, Trey Pierce-Ikawuna, all of those guys, I think including a No Etta, now weigh over 300 pounds. All of them. And some weigh more than 310 pounds. I think some of them are even in that like 320 range. I think Trey Williams might be one of those players. They are big, they are athletic, they are old, they've taken plenty of snaps. It's going to be hard to run on them, especially when they have Jayshon Barham, Jimmy Rolder, and Ernest Hausman behind them. And their special teams with kicker Dominic Zvada is going to help them too get points from long range. I'm concerned about wide receiver and offensive tackle. Deeply concerned about wide receiver. Pretty concerned about offensive tackle, but I can actually see offensive tackle evolving and adapting. I can't really see this wide receiver core being good outside of maybe one player. And the staff is a concern. It's similar to Miami. If Michigan had a much better staff this year, and if Miami had a better game management coach than Cristobal, I would be much higher on these teams than I am right now. And one of them, maybe not both of them, But one or both of them, if they made better portal moves, then I maybe would even include them at the lower end of my legitimate national title contenders, and they would graduate from the dark horse tier. I think that Michigan could go 11-1 or 12-0, but they could also go 6-6 or 7-5. Their schedule is as follows: New Mexico week 1, at Oklahoma week 2, Central Michigan week 3, at Nebraska week 4. Week 6, off the bye, they host Wisconsin. Week 7, they travel to USC. Week 8, they host Washington. Week 9, they play at rival Michigan State. Week 10, they host Purdue. They play Northwestern in Wrigley Field, neutral site game off the Week 11 bye. They travel to Maryland Week 13, and they host Ohio State in Week 14. At the beginning of the year, this is a little bit different from Miami, because Miami, I think at the beginning of the year, could come out hot and could immediately look like a top 10 team, could immediately be playing at that level, because they have experience at the quarterback position, and they were straight up a better team than Michigan last year, return more from a better team than Michigan does. Michigan returns more production, but I think you'd rather have a lot of Miami's returning or incoming production than Michigan's from a roster standpoint. What makes Michigan special is their D-line is stacked, their offensive line should be better, and I think it was underrated in run blocking last year. Pass blocking, though, for the entire year was awful. If they can, if two of three things can happen, wide receiver is competent, pass blocking is competent or good, quarterback play is competent or good. If two of those three things can happen, they are a college football playoff contender, potentially Big Ten championship contender. If all three happen, who's to say they can't find a way to win some games in the playoffs and perhaps be there when it's all said and done? Again, not picking it, but just as a dark horse play, as a team that is top 15 in power ratings, close to top 10, which Michigan is according to many power ratings, they're in that conversation. Now we can talk about Notre Dame. Notre Dame, in terms of odds, is not a dark horse, but I want to entertain the idea that Notre Dame is probably being overvalued here in the preseason, and I think that Notre Dame will come back to earth, come down to earth, at least in September. But maybe after that, because opening up at Miami is going to be tough, and then in CJ Carr's, or maybe it's Kenny Minchie who's starting, the new quarterback is going to have to play Corey Heatherman's defense on the road and Mike Elko's in a stadium that typically is very inviting to opposing fans. That's not going to be fun. So let's say they drop both of those games. Drop both of them. They went 14-2 last year, and they start out 0-2 this year. Well, the good news with Notre Dame is after Miami in week 1 and Texas A&M in week 3, they get Purdue week 4. That's an auto win. At Arkansas in week 5 could be tough, but they should win. Boise State week 6 is the same thing, tough, but Notre Dame should win. NC State week 7, I'd say that's an auto win. USC in week 8, USC has not played, fun fact, in South Bend and won since 2011. So let's say they could win that game. They can, and let's say they will. Off the week 9 bye, they play at Boston College. They get Navy week 11 at home, Pittsburgh on the road week 12, Syracuse at home week 13. They play at Stanford, which will be a shell of a team, should be a 50-point win for Notre Dame in week 14. So they go 0-2, and then they finish out with 10 straight wins. Now, I haven't exactly entertained that with Michigan and Miami. I didn't go through more of how I see this playing out, because I think with those teams, they could start slow, or they could be inconsistent throughout the year. I think with Notre Dame, because of what they have shown me, I can more easily trust Freeman than I can Moore or Cristobal. I just can. However, they return 56% of their production, for example, and they have enough landmine games and enough newness at key positions while also winning in a way that's not sustainable last year. They had more than 5 defensive touchdowns, and all of them came, I think, in the regular season. They had some special teams touchdowns. They had a quarterback who had eyes in the back of his skull and who evaded pressure like crazy. They're in Riley Leonard, and they're now replacing him with CJ Carr, Kenny Minchie, who are not going to be nearly as aware in the pocket or as mobile as Leonard is. They've upgraded at receiver, but they also have a change at defensive coordinator. So, all things considered, I think Notre Dame is taking a step back this year, while Michigan is taking a step forward. Miami is probably going to be similar in my calculation, and the next two teams we'll talk about are taking a step forward. So this is the only team we're talking about here in my dark horse title contenders who I think is worse than last season. But what Notre Dame can do is with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price at running back, who I love, with Jaden Greathouse and Malachi Fields and Jordan Faison at wide receiver, with an offensive line in Ashton Craig, Billy Scruth, Charles Jagasaw, Anthony Knapp, Emil Wagner, who are deep, who are experienced, who are only going to have more growth after a really great year last year in the trenches. And with a cornerback room, of course, that includes Leonard Moore, Christian Gray, Drake Bowen, and Jalen Sneed at linebacker. I think that combined with their culture means when they face adversity early, they're not going to quit. And this is a team who's young enough where they're going to get better as the year goes on. So I wouldn't be shocked if with the 38th toughest schedule per FPI, but also with some landmine games, it wouldn't shock me if, let's say, they go 0-2 to start the year, then win out, they're 10-2, and they make a little bit of a playoff run again. That wouldn't shock me. Maybe they win it all this year, because, as Mike Denbrock has said, they do have a higher ceiling this year on offense. He thinks the offense has improved compared to last year, and it sounds like their new DC, Chris Ash, who I'm not exactly a huge fan of, but he thinks that they have more than enough talent to be successful on the defensive side. So what if both of those things are true, and in December and January, there's a stark contrast between those versions of Notre Dame and the September version of Notre Dame? Then they can win it all. Looking at Texas A&M here, this is one of my favorite teams. And they're one of my favorites because of how much production they bring back, and also their coach in Mike Elko, who, look at what Mike Elko did at Duke and tell me that they do not have elite coaching there. He punched above his weight class, his roster's weight class at Duke, and now he has a war chest at Texas A&M. Texas A&M is plus 235 to reach the playoffs, plus 1,400 to win the SEC. I love everything about Texas A&M this year. Their staff, their culture, their lines of scrimmage, quarterback, wide receiver, running back. Don't love tight end a whole lot. Also don't exactly love defensive end or special teams, but I only think tight end is a weakness. The others are just kind of areas with questions that could go one way or the other. I expect Marcel Reed to take a big step forward this year, and Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels behind Armaj Reed-Adams, Chase Basantes, Trezon III, and Demetrius Crownover, who are viewed by Pro Football Focus and many analysts as All-American, All-SEC caliber offensive linemen. Le'Veon Moss and Amari Daniels had success on the ground last year. Texas A&M was second in the SEC, only behind Tennessee in rushing yards per game, and they were in the top third of the conference in yards per carry. So with that much returning on the O-line at running back, Reed, who's a mobile QB, having another year of coaching under his belt, I expect them to lead the SEC in rushing offense this year, both in yards per game but also yards per carry. I think they'll be the best SEC rushing offense. I look at Kevin Concepcion and Terry Bussey, like their wide receiver room, even with the departure of Noah Thomas. Albert Regis, Tyler Onyedim, and Cassius Howell make up a lethal starting defensive line. I don't think they have the same depth they did last year, but that defensive front is still going to be pretty good, especially with Scooby Williams and Taurine York behind them and Marcus Ratcliffe at safety. And then Will Lee III comes back and Julian Humphrey transfers in from Georgia. A schedule that features UTSA at home week 1 and Utah State week 2 means I think they can they can straighten out any of the kinks they have in their hose, if you know what I mean. If things aren't flowing properly, if they need to make a change at certain positions, they can do that in those 2 weeks. And they travel to Notre Dame in week 3, and yes, it's on the road, and Notre Dame is a bye, but I wonder if A&M's experience and Elko defensively playing against a new quarterback is more advantageous than Notre Dame coming off of a bye. I wonder that. After the week 4 bye, Auburn, Mississippi State, and Florida, 3 straight home games, weeks 5, 6, and 7. They then have 3 straight road games in weeks 8, 9, and 11, with a bye in there at week 10, so I think that trade-off is worth it. They get South Carolina at home. So notice with A&M, the best quarterbacks they will play. So that's DJ Lagway, that is Lenora Sellers, and probably Arch Manning. I don't have a lot of faith in Garrett Nussmeier. They will be, two of the three will be on at home. They will be on in Aggie land. And then as for Texas, it's a rivalry game, and while I would probably pencil that in as an L, you'd rather play, I think, Manning on the road than get Manning at home and then have to go to South Carolina and go to Florida. I think you'd rather have that. So the schedule I view as a win. It's the 9th toughest per ESPN's FPI in terms of schedule rank. Luckily, A&M is ranked inside the top 10 in preseason per FPI. They could go 11-1. If everything pans out for them and then everyone on their schedule disappoints, they could go 12-0, but I wouldn't count on that. They could also, again, go 7-5, 8-4, because there are landmines on the schedule. But being top 10 in returning production is always huge, and they're top 15 in preseason S&P Plus, and they have a coach in Mike Elko who I trust, and you should trust as well. Say they get a home game in the playoffs. They're probably winning that with the coaching and home field advantage and the roster they have. Now you need 3 more wins. A&M is top 10 in talent. They have, I think, a top 10 head coach in Mike Elko and a staff that's certainly flirting top 10. What if they stay healthy, some other teams get banged up, and their rushing offense is so good, and their defense so effective that they can establish game control in almost any matchup they have. And say they get the right matchups in the bracket, and there you have it. A&M, in some universe, can hoist the trophy. Now, let's talk about my final dark horse contender, that being USC. So what USC has that none of these teams do is they got Lincoln Riley. Now, I don't think that Lincoln Riley is one of the best head coaches right now, but what I like about Lincoln Riley, and especially recently, is he's shown a willingness to change, while at the same time I think he retains the offensive acumen that he had at Oklahoma and displayed at USC with Caleb Williams. No one has the offensive genius that USC does on this list outside of maybe Mike Denbrock. And I do not think that Denbrock is quite the mind that Lincoln Riley is overall. If Denbrock's a better play caller, I think it's due to the fact that Riley has to manage a lot and therefore can't focus as much on play calling as Denbrock does, because Riley has CEO, head coach responsibilities, although with Chad Bowen as general manager, maybe some of those things can be eased up this year, which would probably help Riley. He struggled at USC. Every year he has been in the Coliseum in Los Angeles, the record has gotten worse and worse and worse. I think that changes, though, this year. And no team has Lincoln Riley outside of if you're Ohio State or Texas, and then you got variants like Ryan Day or Steve Sarkisian. And very few teams have a D'Anton Lynn level defensive coordinator with the defensive staff that he has. Very few teams also have this schedule, which is ranked towards the bottom of America. It's pretty low in FPI in terms of Big Ten schedules. So by bottom of America, let me correct myself there. It's in the bottom of the Big Ten. I guess you could say the Big Ten's America's conference in a very cynical way because of how widespread they are. But let me pull you up the specific number here. USC has, yes, the 28th toughest strength of schedule. 28th toughest. And if you want to be cynical, as I've already said, and say that the game week 8 at Notre Dame, as long as you win enough conference games, that may not matter. And maybe Notre Dame's a national championship contender this year, and they're one of the best teams in America like they were last year. Well, then losing on the road wouldn't be that painful. It'd be painful, but if you're a good team, you'll get enough wins to reach the playoffs and maybe get revenge in the college football playoff. So Missouri State at home week 1, Georgia Southern week 2, at Purdue week 3, Michigan State at home week 4, and Illinois on the road at week 5. They could easily start out 5-0. They could also start off 4-1, but I don't think it'll be worse than 4-1. They get off a bye week 6. Michigan, they host week 7 off the bye. They play at Notre Dame week 8. Off a week 9 bye, they travel to Nebraska. They host Northwestern and Iowa back-to-back weeks 11 and 12. Play at Oregon week 13. And then they host UCLA in week 14. Honestly, guys, I look at this schedule and think to myself, there's a world where this is easier than the 28th best schedule in America. That's again per FPI. They could go 11-1 or 12-0 if everything pans out, but they could realistically go 6-6 again. I like Jaden Mayava. Don't think that he is a top 5 quarterback, but I think he can be a top 20, top 15 guy and put up top 10 or even better numbers with his supporting cast. Waymon Jordan, Eli Sanders, and Brian Jackson is a mean running back group. John Ray Reed at center is fantastic. If DJ Wingfield is eligible, they will once again have a strong interior O-line like they did last year, where they did a really good job of running the ball. Elijah Page, I love at tackle. Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane are the second best wide receiver duo in the Big Ten, only behind Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate. That's massive. They finally have size on the defensive line. So they got a transfer from Kentucky and from Georgia who are over 300 pounds. Keyshawn Silver's the one from Kentucky who's going to start. And then Devin Tompkins comes back after playing some last year. That should be a good D-tackle unit. Cameron Fountain and Anthony Lucas, they come back. Another year of experience there. Eric Gentry I view as the best linebacker in the Big Ten. Kamari Ramsey could be one of the best safeties there, and they bring in Bishop Fitzgerald at transfer. And they also bring in transfer corner DJ Harvey, who I love. So the defense should be better. The offense should be better. It was Riley's worst offense of his career, so I expect regression to the mean there. And having Lynn and that staff in year 2 is really, really going to help. I view USC as a surefire college football playoff contender this year. If everything goes right and the field is super weak, they have maybe that 1 or 2% chance to win it all. Thank you for watching College Football with Sam. Make sure that you've liked the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for the channel and team playlists and podcasts in the description, join the free Discord server where we talk college football 24/7, and have commented your thoughts down below. Check out the description for any ways you can support the channel monetarily. Everything else I've asked you to do is completely free, and your support means the world to me. We're trying to become the next big thing on college football YouTube. 6-figure subscribers, maybe 1 million one day. I think we can do that. And also check out any videos or playlists, anything in these columns right here, where there will be videos and playlists. Yeah, you get the point. Have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one.